Okay, we are live.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. This is the live webinar portion of our virtual Paddle the Rouge event. It's our 7th annual Paddle the Rouge, and we're really pleased this morning to be welcoming the Superintendent for Rouge National Urban Park, Omar McDadi, and we have Eugenia, who is with the Wildlands League team. She's our outreach manager, and Eugenia will be helping manage all of the housekeeping and steering for this webinar. Eugenia, do you want to tell us a little bit about how the housekeeping works on this particular webinar, which is a bit different than our others?
Yeah, for sure. Welcome, everybody. This week, we're joining you from YouTube Live instead of Zoom. We are streaming through Zoom. I'm here with Janet Sumner and Omar from Parks Canada. Things look a little bit different today. I'm outside, obviously, and also we're on YouTube. So today will be a much more conversational style coffee shop chat with Omar about Rouge National Urban Park and its role in nature-based recovery in Canada. Just a few things. If you are joining us on YouTube and you're interested in asking a question, please drop them down in the comment section below. We have moderators that will be watching for questions. You can learn more about us at Wildlands League and follow us on our social media handle at Wildlands League. Other than that, enjoy, sit back and relax, and let's learn about the Rouge.
Thanks so much, Eugenia. So I'll just maybe kick this off by saying, Eugenia, you're sharing your screen, right? You're going to do that. Yeah. So she's going to share the screen so that we have Omar's slides up and raring to go. But I just wanted to give you maybe a little bit of a background in terms of what we were asking of Omar. Some of you may have been watching our previous webinar series, which has really been trying to lay down the track for how nature can be at the heart of recovery. Many of us have been surviving through COVID, and it's damaged both the economy and people's health, and it's been a sort of a tectonic shift for most people. And the question now is, as we can imagine what recovery might look like, is to start planning for that when it will occur, so we can be ready for the recovery. And we've started a process of thinking around taking a landscape level look at this and saying, could you do recovery, especially in the south of Canada, where our endangered species, we have the most number of endangered species in the southern parts of Canada, where we have human settlement and farms. And we thought that we've been putting forward the suggestion that the southern parts of Canada, where we have all of our cities and our farms, should look something like this, basically these puzzle pieces, and try to unite these to build a network of nature areas. Urban protection, so Rouge, for example, is a perfect example of that. Rouge National Urban Park, first ever national urban park in Canada. So creating more urban protection in cities right across Canada, from Halifax to Whitehorse. Thinking about how you do restoration on the intervening landscape, whether it's city properties, your own backyard, growing butterfly gardens, etc., and knitting that together with green infrastructure. Now, urban protection is part of green infrastructure, but green infrastructure is many times like building more meadows, actually creating places where you have the riverbanks, where you will have concrete on either side of a riverbank, actually removing those and renaturalizing it and letting the area do what it's supposed to do, which is absorb and release water. It slows down the movement of water and increases flood resilience and drought resilience. And Rouge is a perfect example of that. And then reaching out to the rural landscape, where you have farmers and ranchers, and many of them are doing restoration projects and stewardship projects. And Rouge, again, is another example of that, where we have farmers who are doing restoration projects. So thinking about how all of these puzzle pieces work together in terms of building that network of nature in the southern context, where we have cities and farms. And what I asked Omar to give me some thinking about was to really talk to us about how establishing a new national urban park has not only been great for nature, but also been very, very good economically, and the types of jobs that are created there. Many people think that when we're talking about green infrastructure and urban parks, you're really just talking about tree planting. That could not be further from the truth. And so Omar is actually going to walk you through, and he was one of my first calls. I called him up and I said, I just can't find the research on this in Canada. And I asked Omar if he could help walk through that for us today And so he is going to do that. And he's going to tell us a little bit more about how building Rouge National Urban Park has actually been a job creator. Omar, go ahead.
Good morning, Janet, and good morning, everyone. And thanks for inviting me for this great webinar and for being part of Paddle the Rouge. And I've really enjoyed the morning session and to see you out on the Rouge River. So I'm really pleased to talk about the creation and establishment of Rouge National Urban Park as a case study for ecological integrity and the restoration of natural heritage, cultural heritage, and agricultural heritage, but also to talk about the many, many positive community and economic benefits that are tied to the park's establishment and creation. And so that's what I hope to go through today and have a nice discussion with you about. And we'll go to the next slide. So I want to first off start by saying, Parks Canada all across the country and the 47 national parks that we manage, 171 national historic sites, 4 marine conservation areas, and other sites too. Parks Canada makes a significant contribution, our places, to Canada's economy. And in 2017, 2018, our sites contributed over $4 billion to Canada's gross domestic product. So a huge player in Canada's economy. And that's money spent by Parks Canada on staff, investments in restoration and infrastructure, as well as visitor spending. As well, $2.5 billion in labor income was generated in association with our places. These are jobs and work that's created in association with national parks and national historic sites. So we're talking about a major contribution to the Canadian economy, and over $500 million in tax revenue was generated, and that money goes to support Canadians and social programs, as well as over 40,000 full-time jobs were supported all across the country. So Parks Canada plays a big role in the Canadian economy, especially in rural places where many of our protected areas are located, and now increasingly in places like Rouge National Urban Park, Lachine Canal in Montreal, in urban centers as well. We'll go to the next slide. Now, introducing the Rouge, I've loved the first hour and 15 minutes of Paddle the Rouge because it's been such a great celebration of the Rouge, and I think working with Wildlands League the last number of years has been awesome, and I think now Paddle the Rouge and paddling is really ingrained in people's minds, and they associate the Rouge with that, and that's amazing because paddling is a great part of our heritage, a great part of living in Canada, and some of the things we can do and take advantage of outside. And we've been working with Wildlands to create the park for many, many years. And yeah, thank you so much, Janet, for all the work that you and your team, volunteers, and the community have done to make the creation of Canada's first national urban park a possibility. And many people won't know this, but Janet was part of the parliamentary and legislative process. She testified in Parliament. It's really meaningful. I heard Anna talk about it earlier, the fact that we have our own legislation, a really great management plan. These things are really important because they give us the tools to manage the National Urban Park. But anyways, you could see a map here. The park is located 30 minutes from downtown, and it's the only national park that's connected, to public transportation to this extent. You can take the commuter train, you can bike to the park, you can take the subway and one bus, and many people's backyards even back onto the park. So it's a extremely well-connected, protected area. In terms of what we protect, well, the park is in an urban area, and it protects. I've heard a lot of talk about biodiversity in the first hour, and yes, we do have over 1,700 species. We're actually inching towards 2,000. The number just keeps going higher and higher, which is incredible. So we have some of the richest biodiversity in all of Canada, and we protect natural heritage that includes meadows, rivers, forests, species at risk.
Sorry, Omar, that's
Yeah,
amazing. You've gone from
yeah.
1,700 to almost 2,000.
We are getting closer to 2,000 every day. And you saw, Jory was in her team. Jory was doing a trail presentation earlier on, and they keep finding species. We've done these amazing citizen science events like the BioBlitz. We've had 3 really huge ones in the park, and now we're getting closer to 2,000.
Wow, and what do you put that down to? What do you, is it that basically you're increasing ecological integrity, you're doing stewardship projects, reintroductions? Is it just all of that?
It's everything. It's because we're in a biological hotspot. It's because we're at the northern extent of the Carolinian forest. It's because of the restoration work. It's because of stewardship work that we're involved with many, many community partners. And it's because we have more scientists on the ground now than ever, who are able to detect and count things that maybe we didn't see before, and more work that's happening in the park with universities and colleges than we've ever had before. So all of these things amount to a higher count, and we're finding more things.
That is something to be truly proud of. And as all Canadians who have been working to protect Rouge National Urban Park, the many, many thousands of volunteers over the years, they should all be proud of that achievement. Thank you so much for letting us know that.
Thank you. And I thank everyone who's contributed to make this possible. And it's really been 4 decades of work recently, as well as many generations and thousands of years of Indigenous stewardship. The park also protects cultural heritage and is home to over 10,000 years of human history. We work with the Rouge National Urban Park First Nations Advisory Circle on all aspects of park establishment and operations, but there are also heritage buildings in the park as well. And I think what makes the park, in addition to being in an urban location, one of the things that makes the park so unique in Canada is that we protect and have a mandate to protect agricultural heritage and promote a vibrant farming community. The park is home to literally the last working farm in the city of Toronto and some of the last working farms in the region, and it's home to Class 1 soil, which is the richest, rarest, and most fertile in Canada. So we really focus on protecting nature, cultural heritage, and agricultural heritage.
So could I just stop there? That middle building there, that looks awfully familiar to me. I think that was where maybe one of the last meetings with Minister McKenna and the farmers was held to sort of help iron out the details on the legislation and gain their trust, right? Because that was needed to actually broker the deal to get Rouge National Urban Park.
So this is the Cedar Grove Community Center, which is a historic building in the park, and it's an amazing old schoolhouse. And yes, Janet, we've had many meetings there with community members, with stakeholders, with conservationists, with farmers, with our Indigenous partners. It's where we tend to have a lot of meetings, and it's a wonderful piece of local heritage.
And it's not far from Reeser Road, right?
It's just off of Reeser Road, and,
that's right,
and it's the heart of the historic Mennonite community. And the Reeser family came north from Pennsylvania in 1804, and there's still so many Reesers farming in the park today. And some of them even went to this school. Now it's no longer a school that's open; it's a community center, but it has a lot of historic value.
Okay, sorry. You go ahead.
Oh, it's great. Let's keep
slide,
having these great conversations. We'll go to the next slide. Yeah. So here's the park itself and the map. So we are located in the Greater Toronto area. The park goes through the cities of Toronto, Pickering, Markham, all the way to the township of Whitchurch, Stouffville, and up to Uxbridge. It is massive. It's one of the largest urban parks in the world. As a reference point, it's 23 times larger than Central Park in New York, 50 times larger than High Park in downtown Toronto. And Janet, you and I have talked about this a lot. We're within 1 hour's drive of 20% of Canada's population. Now, I grew up in the Greater Toronto area, always dreaming of having a chance to go to a national park, and that was my dream, and it didn't happen for me until later on in life, when I was a younger adult, going to school in British Columbia. The first ever national park I went to was Pacific Rim National Park Reserve. I would have loved to have a chance to go to a national park growing up. So I think this park, it's meaningful because it provides an opportunity for people to have their first national park experience, their first ever paddle, their first ever walk in nature. And it's a real honor for me and everyone on our team to be able to work on this project. It's the project of a lifetime. Now, because we're in the establishment phase, it means so many different things. It means we're building dozens and dozens of kilometers of trails, and we open new trails every year, including this year. We're building an education and welcome center, which is really exciting, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. We've undertaken massive restoration programming and reintroducing species at risk in the park, and protecting species at risk and improving the park's ecological integrity, and we'll look more at that. And we're protecting some of the last remaining farmland in the region. So we'll go to the next slide. Now, when we look and we think about the park as an economic driver, you know, I kind of break it up simply in terms of the impacts being short-term and long-term. And I'd say over the last 8 years, the short-term impacts we've had are very significant in terms of the investments that we're making in the Canadian economy and in the local and regional economy. And I look at it, you know, in terms of a few different categories, but we are providing first and foremost, you know, good, eclectic jobs at a living wage that give people a basis to build a life in the Greater Toronto Area. So that's, you know, the core of what we're doing. Is we've created this team. We're now about 80 people, and it, you know, we take care of so many different things, and I'll get into that in a sec. But we do things like, you know, obviously biology, and we have ecologists, and that's, you know, the driving life force of what we do. But there's so many other things. We have people that work in accounting and finance and paying the bills. We have wardens, law enforcement wardens, that are out protecting the park and enforcing park rules and regulations. We have our education staff. We have people that work in HR. We have people that fix things and maintain our assets and do water quality testing, and all the things that you don't maybe necessarily think about immediately when you think about a national park: plumbers, electricians, carpenters. Then there's the labor market that we're making a huge contribution to. So as we're building the park, we're providing I think this is probably the biggest short-term economic impact, is the labor income that we provide. And here I've just taken a little snapshot of the different jobs that are involved in creating a national park. And I mean, it's really significant, but we've got tradespeople that are out building trails. We have people that work in construction. We've got landscape architects. We have archaeologists, and that's being led by our Indigenous partners. We've got architects that are designing different facilities for the park. We work with Park Bus that brings people to the parks. So we're helping to employ bus drivers. Tree planting is a huge component of what we do, and we have professionals do that work. We also provide opportunities for the community and for volunteers. We've got people that plow the roads, collect the garbage, clean facilities. We have people that are soil experts. So we're trying to better understand what makes class 1 soil, and what is the value of soil, and how can we best preserve soil. We have lifeguards that work in the park as well. We developed an app for the park. So we've hired a suite of students from the University of Toronto Scarborough. So we've had software developers be involved in this project as well. And we've done public engagement. We've hired people that do facilitation, because we wanted to make sure that the vision for the park reflected the hopes and dreams of the community of conservationists, park farmers, and of Indigenous partners. And in our democracy, it's very important to make sure that we're engaging and getting feedback in the best, most objective way. So all of these people, all of these jobs, all of these program areas come together to allow us to create a national urban park. We even have arborists that come and help, because we have, in an urban forest, hazardous trees that we have to make sure you know, our trails remain safe.
So I was in the park just the other day, and actually I've been in almost every day this week, but including Saturday and Sunday. But I would say I was marveling at the park wardens. I really like them. It's been such, like, I used to go to the park before it was a national urban park, and then now I go afterwards, right? And so the park wardens are just such a treasure. I gotta say, there was a young mom with 5 kids down there just trying to get a bit of a break, you know, in terms of COVID and get out in nature. Maybe they're living in a condo, can't escape it kind of thing. And they're down there and they're trying to figure out, well, you know, where can I picnic? Where can I take my kids? And the park wardens are so helpful. And just, you know, putting her at ease and making sure that she had a safe place to be with her kids it was just wonderful to see. And also, of course, they're, I think maybe it was you, I forget who I was talking to, but was telling me that the park wardens, while they're not necessarily the species interpreters, they often are the people who know quite a bit and can actually help you understand, what am I looking at here? What's this plant, or what's this animal that I'm looking at? So the park wardens are both helpful in terms of just navigation, but also really helpful in terms of understanding what are the creatures that you're seeing online or seeing in the park.
Thanks, Jenna. I'm so glad you said that. And I'm a huge appreciator of our wardens, and they make such a huge difference in protecting our places. They are so friendly with the public, but they also, you know, are very much the front lines and have been, especially during COVID as well, working every day, making sure that our park remains protected in the best way possible. So they're you know, real heroes of the park for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And actually, just really quickly before we go to this slide, the last thing I want to say here is we're heavily involved in skills training, development, and capacity building. So we've hired hundreds of students, literally almost 100 now since 2013, and those are summer students that help us in all aspects of establishing and operating the park.
Well, what I've also been amazed at is just the array of jobs, right? Everything from somebody who can help with facilitation, maybe even in terms of lawyers in terms of helping design the legislation, figuring out how do you actually put all this into place? How do you make it work? How does the regulatory system work, et cetera? Hiring people who can help interpret, hiring people who can help clean and create facilities that are warm and welcoming. So I think that it's just such an array, and I think that's, I mean, one of the things I've been very impressed with is the surrounding community, from seniors to youth, is just so involved in the park. And you obviously, with the Indigenous Heritage Circle, are doing an amazing job there in terms of bringing to life the Indigenous history and Indigenous role in preserving Rouge National Urban Park. So it really is such an array of jobs that is involved in creating the park and making the magic happen.
Absolutely, Janet. And I think there's been such a variety. In the earlier years, we really worked on the legislation, the management plan, the policy, the legal aspects of things. And now we're really trying to shift our focus as we complete the establishment of the park on operations, and how can we make this the best run, most sustainable park that we can have, where we reduce the amount of garbage and littering, where we completely eliminate poaching and things like that, and we manage the visitation in sustainable ways. So it's every year has been a bit different and different challenges, and as we get into really focusing on operations, it's about trying to make it the best park that it could possibly be. We'll go to the next slide. So in terms of investing in natural capital, we hear a lot about ecosystem services these days, and Parks Canada has done a rough calculation, and we think that our sites all across the country contribute about $266 billion in terms of ecosystem services. What are ecosystem services? This includes pollination, carbon sequestration and storage, food production, soil formation, clean air, and flooding control is a big one, especially in an urban context. We know how important our ravines are and valley lands to prevent flooding. And our park in particular plays a very key role there in terms of slope stabilization. There's a report from 2012 that the David Suzuki Foundation did. It was a great report, and they estimated that Rouge National Urban Park provides $115 million per year in ecosystem services and economic benefits. Now, I've rerun those numbers, or I've adjusted them for inflation, and also for the fact that we have a much larger park now, than about 25% larger than it was expected to be in 2012. And that the number comes out to $144 million in that we would estimate to provide in ecosystem services and economic benefits per year. That's a very high number. I actually think that if we reran it based on what we know today, I think it would be a much higher number, because we're looking at all the different types of programming that we're doing and all the restoration work that's been done, which we'll talk about in just a second. But we know now. Sorry, go ahead, Janet.
Sorry, I was going to say, I absolutely agree on that. I think the number would be higher. Just doing the restoration projects would increase the ability of the park to absorb and allow water to flow during drought, et cetera. So this sort of natural sort of sponge it up and then release it, and how a wetland is actually supposed to work is being increased every year as you do restoration projects all the way along the river. I also think, in terms of just the species reintroduction, the fact that we're now approaching 2,000 species, having those kinds of things we didn't know back then. And so all of these services, and then I'll just give one anecdote, which I find amazing and was one of the things that I was first drawn to about the park, was that the trees in Toronto, if anybody remembers the ice storm, I think it was maybe about 7 years ago or so, and that ice storm devastated the trees in Toronto. I mean, there was all kinds of trees down, many had to be removed, and people were, really feeling it in the city of Toronto, and just feeling how their trees were being taken away from them. But the trees in the Rouge stood tall and firm because they had deeper root systems, more complex, and many of them were native trees, and they stood as a forest, right? And so their resistance to that. So what this does is the Rouge becomes like a great example of how to create resistance in the face of climate change. Whether it's drought or flood or ice storms, the Rouge is the place that is actually helping buffer against the ravages of climate change. So it's a fantastic story, and I would encourage actually Parks Canada to rethink this and maybe do the numbers, an up-to-date version of the numbers, and maybe work with some of the groups on getting that done.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, Janet. And I think, I remember that ice storm, and for sure the resilience that we have in the park actually ends up saving money because there's less damage. And obviously when there's a huge ice storm like that can create a lot of damage and a lot of hazardous trees and things like that. So there's a lot of resilience, and we have created this nice buffer zone. And it's a refuge, not just for species at risk, but also for people. So maybe that's a good segue for the next slide. Is we hear a lot about in economic impact analysis, like return on investment. It's a huge buzzword, ROI. And we know that the return on investment for investments in public green space can be very meaningful and very significant. And in particular, there's a recent study. Now, often these studies are done by Parks Canada or a conservation organization or maybe university, but this is a study that was done by a real estate and economic development consultancy, HR&A advisors, and they mainly operate in the United States. And they found that there's a 7-to-1 return on investment for every dollar spent on park development in the city of Dallas, Texas. And I think what's really astonishing is that within this study, they found that trails in particular have a 50-to-1 return on investment. And that's huge. And they found that trails can be a real catalyst for economic development, for community building, and for social equity as well, because it provides people a chance to connect to different communities, and it also encourages people to get involved it provides opportunities for people to contribute to the local economy through things like food vendors and sustainable and appropriate types of business near trails.
Yeah, but just things like wellness and physical fitness, and I mean, especially now with COVID, you can only just imagine how that's going to be beneficial, both from a health, wellness, and spiritual connection point of view. I mean, some people pay big dollars to go forest bathing, and you could go walk in Rouge National Urban Park as you're developing these trails and creating a place for people to connect to nature. It's just amazing.
For sure, and very much like the session that we just saw Nadia give as part of Paddle the Rouge. I think the park itself can and is already a refuge for people seeking peace and from a wellness and mental health perspective, we do a wellness walk program in the park, and that's something that we do in partnership with the local hospital and in partnership with social workers, and it's a really great program, and I think that's what this park is meant to provide, and especially now in the time of COVID, where we can't really travel, we certainly don't travel far away. The park more than ever now is a place that people are turning to, and not just our park, but green spaces in general. These are places people are turning for refuge, for a safe, a safe place to go and to get away from it all.
That's why we need more national urban parks.
And I just want to do a quick time check. We are just over 10 minutes. We have just over 10 minutes left.
Okay, sorry, I'll stop interrupting. Go ahead, Omar.
Well, we'll get through it. No, it's great. So we'll go to the next one. Anyway, so we've made big investments in the park, and we've invested a lot in ecological integrity and natural capital. So we've planted over 100,000 trees, restored over 70 hectares of wetland. We've created new forests, 26 hectares of forest habitat. This is all since 2015. Not including what we've done this year. And we've released over 350 turtles in the park. Actually, we're now up to 396 of endangered turtles that have been released back into the park in partnership with the Toronto Zoo. So this has been our primary focus in terms of establishing, regenerating the park. And it also contributes to the economy because of the different partners, organizations, and contractors that we work with to get this work done. We'll go to the next one.
Next slide, Eugenia.
We're also investing in the park's agricultural heritage, and all the restoration projects we've done have been in partnership with park farmers, which is amazing. And the long-term potential of the park is incredible. We are planning community gardens. We're going to be providing new opportunities for park farmers. This is a photo of myself and our 10-month-old baby. This is just from a few days ago. This is from the weekend where we went and picked strawberries in the park at a U-Pick at Research Market. And, I think it's incredible to have opportunities like this, protected lands, class 1 soil, locally grown produce and food, and just steps away from a new trail that we just built and opened in the fall.
So this is the Research Farm, right? They now have like it's a U-Pick, but they also have a place where you can go and choose farm produce as well. It's kind of,
that's right.
Yeah. So many people used to go to Whittemore Farms, and now they're going to Research Farms because they have the ability for people to go there and select produce and get it fresh from the farm, quite literally.
Yeah, and really great baked goods. And there are many other people that are selling great things off of the farm in the park, and also tons of potential for us to go further with this, especially as we build the trails, which are the lifeblood of the park and will provide connections for visitors and for local communities to access farm products. So we'll go to the next one. We're also making some investments in cultural heritage, and we have some heritage buildings in the park that we've been strategically investing in, piloting programs with organizations like Building Up, Blue Door, and Raising the Roof, where we actually provide skills training opportunities, sometimes for populations that face like employment barriers. So we're actually fixing up houses that are important for the park from either a cultural heritage perspective, or also sometimes they provide, actually, believe it or not, habitat for endangered species. Some of these houses have been in the park for many, many, many decades, some over 100 years, and they've actually become important roosting spots for species like bats, or in some cases barn habitat for barn swallows. And as part of our cultural heritage investments, we work very closely with our Indigenous partners and have an incredible archaeological program that's active in the park, including this week. We'll go to the next one. And the creation of the park very much keeps with the Government of Canada's greening of government strategy. Everything is being developed with sustainable development as a guiding principle. We're actually in the process of trying to build Parks Canada's first ever net carbon zero building, and I'm gonna talk about that in just a second. So and we've put in place just this year many electric vehicle charging stations, solar panels. it's the future is now, and this is the type of technology, and these are the types of pieces of infrastructure that we're putting into the park as the first lens that we're looking at things through. We'll go to the next one. So, really quickly, Janet, you were there for the day.
Yeah.
After 8 years, we announced the future location of our visitor center across the street from the Toronto Zoo. It's in an area that's an old naturalized parking lot, so very minimal ecological footprint it'll have, but also an opportunity to plug into the grid. We'll go to the next slide. And this location is great. It's close to the zoo, where we do a lot of conservation programming. It's close to public transportation. It's close to where our park bus shuttle goes. It's close to the 401, so you get access to people from many different communities. And it's right across, just a few meters away from a green energy source, which is where they take zoo poop and convert it into energy, so it's green energy, and we're exploring the opportunities of taking that green energy and using it to power the center at a good value for the public. Mm-hmm. So it's a great location.
Yeah, it is a fantastic location also for the visitors, right? So if they're coming up there to visit the Parks Canada Visitor Center, they're almost just a stone's throw away from the Toronto Zoo. So it's, in a sense, as a family outing, it's a 2-for-1.
Totally. And we've got such great partnerships with the zoo. We're trying to build a conservation precinct with them, and they've been a really great partner to Parks Canada. We appreciate them very much. Mm-hmm. I think we'll go to the next one. Anyway, this slide just looks at the center and our design principles. We want to lead in environmental and sustainable design, and I can't wait, Janet, to invite you to the opening in 2024. It's going to be great. Yeah. We'll go to the next one. So in terms of long-term economic impact, we want to create and maintain this amazing gem, this jewel. And I think for us, when I look at what other national parks have and the things that we might have in the future, in Grossmorn, they have a writers festival. They've got in all of or most of our national parks, very established guided walk programs, heritage tourism. These are the opportunities that we are going to have here, and I think they're incredible opportunities. And it's important, I think, for sure, that locals have the opportunity to benefit, learn about, grow up in a national park, and benefit from that national park. And whether it's a summer job with Parks Canada, whether it's working for the Wildlands League, whether it's taking part in paddling the Rouge, or perhaps even going further and seeing opportunities for themselves in the park to become a guided walk leader, to create their own sustainable business in heritage tourism, to maybe even potentially become a new park farmer and start with a small piece of land. And we're working with Durham College and other post-secondary institutions on trying to develop programming in this area to encourage the next generation, or whether it's becoming a zoologist or a biologist working in the park or for the Toronto Zoo and contributing to the park. There are so many opportunities in the future, and that's a huge part of the vision of Rouge National Urban Park.
It's truly amazing, and I think that I mean, you haven't. Are you going to do the slide about the camping, or is because we talked about this a little bit yesterday, right? That there's actually camping in the park now. It's not open this year because they're doing some renovations, but there's camping in the park. And you have one of my favorite things, which I was asking you about, which is the a context, or you say it better than I do. What are they called?
Yeah, it's an authentic, and
that's right.
Yeah, and it's, sorry, I should have included that, but we have 5 of them in the park, in the campground. When that campground reopens after the renovations are complete, imagine a prospector's tent combined with a yurt, and it's a great place where people can go and learn to camp, or if you haven't camped in a long time, it's a great way to get back into it. So you've got some more comforts, and you're not in a tent, and it's accessible, incredibly accessible as well.
Yeah, it's kind of got the frame of a cabin with a tent covering.
That's right.
That's how I sort of see it. And you had 5 of them, I think, when I was up at the visitor center, or the site where the visitor center is going to be. And I just thought, man, this is glamping, right? Like you could really have a great time there. Totally accessible, and just a marvel. And I've stayed at the yurts in Algonquin, but this I was quite fascinated that there was one so close to me in something like that in Rouge National Urban Park. I did not know that you had that, so that's very cool for people to know about.
Absolutely. Anyway, thank you so much, Janet and the team. And it's honestly, it's an honor and opportunity of a lifetime to get to work on this project. It means the world to myself and my colleagues, and we want to just keep trying to build the park in the right way, and in a way that meets the hopes and dreams and expectations of everyone that we work with, and including the community members that work tirelessly and for many decades to allow for this opportunity to have a national urban park.
Yeah. I'm actually just going to comment on that last slide. So that's the sunrise, is it?
That's right.
Yeah. And then on the left, that picture is the lookout point where you can, in this fall especially, you can see all the beautiful colors as the leaves are changing. It's really quite spectacular up there.
It might be the best place in the city of Toronto to see the fall colors, and it's about 50 to 100, about 150 meters actually, from our future education and welcome center.
Yeah. Well, Omar, I'm going to give you a big thank you, and I have one very last important question for you. What's your favorite place in the park?
My favorite place in the park?
Yeah.
Oh, that is such a good question. It is so hard to pick one. But I think, I'm going to have to go with the Twin Rivers area.
Okay.
I absolutely love the Twin Rivers, the confluence of the meeting of the rivers. The Carolinian forest is amazing. There's a high number of species at risk in the area. I've seen at 5 a.m, coyote and deer sitting about 40 meters from each other, just each respecting, physically distancing, and enjoying one another's company. It's an incredible place, and there are times when I am there and I just can't even believe I'm in the city of Toronto, to be honest.
I know. I was paddling the other day up the Rouge. I mean, my favorite place is just to be on the water, paddling up the Rouge, and you just get away from the beach and all the people, and you're just on the river by yourself, and the bird song is just, it's amazing. And the Carolinian forest. I love the dappled light coming through and just how the breeze moves it. So it is truly a wonder. And I'm so glad that you're at the helm at Rouge National Urban Park and leading the team there. I've been impressed from day one that the team is just so committed to the park and to ecological integrity, and then moving with everybody. That's the other thing, is I know it's not an easy job. I know you've got many issues, and just trying to figure out how you manage all of that and stay sane. It must be because you cycle. So that's all I can put it down to. Eugenia, are there any last comments that you need?
We do have one question. Maybe Omar, you can just give us a bit of an update on how COVID has impacted visits to the park today.
Yeah, thanks, Eugenia. Well, COVID is top of mind, and it's been our absolute number one focus for the last 4 months. There's no doubt. We temporarily, closed park trails at the height of lockdown. Things have been reopened since June 1st, and we actually are experiencing record numbers of visitation. So it's stretched us in many ways. Our team is on the ground, and we're in the park every day, communicating with visitors, really asking people to respect physical distancing. We've upped our cleaning of the park significantly. We have a huge campaign in terms of putting garbage in the right places. We actually are now doing parking controls and compliance reporting every day, or on peak periods, especially on the weekend, to really try to encourage people to practice physical distancing and park in the right places. Our wardens are absolute heroes, as well as our prevention team. They are out there every single day, working with the public. And people are so happy to be in the park. And we all need a place to go and a place to seek refuge and to be in nature. But certainly COVID has put a lot of pressures on us, like it's put pressures on so many other places and organizations. But I think we're managing it as best as we can. The other thing that's really awesome, I think, is the we have such great relationships with the public and the local communities nearby. So we work really, really closely with community associations and presidents of community associations and their boards and members that there's constant flow of information. So if there's an issue that we become aware of, we're able to quickly, and I mean, within minutes or hours, like go and assess a particular situation and try to make it better and manage it.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much, Omar. Go ahead, Janet.
So I was just going to say a big thank you, and thanks to Rouge National Urban Park and the team there that keep us moving in the right direction and with the Rouge. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and have a good day.
Okay.